Hello and welcome to the first in a series of 5 video content pieces that we're going to be doing about the launch today of the Onside Sports Impact Monitor, the 5th wave of it, which takes place on a regular basis in partnership with the Sport for Business membership. There is an awful lot of information which is available within the report, and it will have been winging its way towards the Sport for Business members who took part in it. Over the course of the next 5 days, we're going to be looking at 5 of the key areas and the key points to come out of it. And the first of those, we're going to be looking at the world of confidence and how confident we are in a post-COVID current Ukraine model. And we're joined by Kim Kerwin from Onside Sponsorship, who is going to be our guide through this. You're very welcome to Sport for Business in person, Kim.
Thanks very much, Rob. Looking forward to going through the findings of the 5th wave.
Indeed. There is an awful lot in the report. It's a really detailed, really powerful snapshot of where we are as a sector, talking to agencies, talking to sponsors, talking to rights holders, and across the remit. In today's first look at it, I want to look at confidence, because we've emerged from COVID, we think, we hope, touch wood, if we can find it in this lovely studio. The question of how confident we are about that post-COVID recovery, though, has seen a decline on where we were a year ago when we were more or less in the midst of it. Yeah. Was that a surprise?
Yeah, well, I suppose, there is a bit of a shift from last wave. Wave 4 we did in March 21. They were the highest scores we would have achieved across the 5 waves. And I suppose looking back at March 21, the vaccine rollout was well underway. The economy was reopening, or we had a plan to reopen. So there was, a level of optimism there. What we are seeing is probably more of a bit of a shift from those that are very optimistic, moving into the quite optimistic category, rather than being, completely pessimistic. But the mean scores, certainly for people, how they think about their organisation, their sector, the sports and sponsorship industry, are either the second highest they've been across the 5 waves, or very much in line with wave 4. Where we are seeing the main move and the main area of concern is at the macro level, the economy. The people that are very optimistic, there's only 5%, that's down 11% on last year. And those that are, at a net optimism level, so very optimistic or quite optimistic, that's actually down 33%, which is, quite significant.
It is indeed, and perhaps there is an element where when we were in the midst of COVID, we were all in it together, yeah. Whereas the cost of living and the war in Ukraine, it feels as though it's a little bit outside of our control. One of the interesting elements is that we tend to be much more optimistic about our own organisation, and the closer we are to something, the more optimistic we are. Is that a regular in research, that we tend to look on the bright side of the things we know the best? Yeah,
and I think we've seen that coming through across all the waves. People are very, optimistic about their own industry and their own sector. And I suppose there's less uncertainties and less unknowns there. Whereas, the environment is a little more of, people aren't as sure what's going on or what is going to be impacted by it. And we can see that in that, 54% are very optimistic about their organisation recovering from the impacts of COVID-19. And a further 42% are quite optimistic. So that's almost, everybody. We can also see it coming through in, levels of concern. So, those that are concerned about the war in Ukraine and the impact that might have on the cost of living, a lot less concerned about their organisation. There's only 8% that are extremely concerned about how it will impact their organisation. That increases to 19% for those who are extremely concerned about how it impacts the economy. So again, both in terms of optimism and recovery and in terms of concern for challenges coming up, it is all very much at the macro level that the uncertainty is there, and people in general, which I think would be a positive, see their own organisations performing strongly, and a lot of them continue to perform strongly during COVID when they were open, or are performing strongly now because there's a sort of fueled by a pent-up consumer demand. So I think most of the concerns and most of the lack of optimism that we're seeing, that slight shift there, is at the macro level rather than at the individual organisation level or about sports or sponsorship.
One of the other things that we looked at in relation to the confidence issue was the challenges that some of the organisations are facing. and a remarkable 57% see as a real challenge the opportunity to actually attract staff to work.
Yeah.
And we know that we need people in order to do great things. Where else are the challenges being seen most keenly at this point in the recovery?
Yeah, well, as you say, the staff one was the number one issue, and I think that's been well publicised about people having difficulties recruiting. We also saw that, budgetary constraints is an issue for about 47%. And then some of the members spontaneously mentioned, when we kind of probed about other issues, mentioned about, cost of living. It's obviously impacting businesses as well as consumers. So prices going up, potential increases to interest rates, and also supply chain issues. So they're obviously all having an impact on the budget, which, is the second highest concern. There's also concerns about, getting the hybrid working model right. About 43% have concerns about whether they've got that balance correct. And about 35% are say they're having issues entering into new sponsorship agreements. That could potentially be due to the supply in the market.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much for now on this. That's where we're looking at in relation to confidence. Join us again tomorrow when we will be looking at diversity and the power of sponsorship on the information which you, as Sport for Business members, gave to us.